Well, good morning, church family. I do miss seeing you all here this morning. The building's very empty and lonely this morning without all of your bright, shining, smiling faces here. But I do hope you know that you are loved, you are missed, and I do hope that we're all doing well and staying safe as we transition into another period of online worship for a little while. This is the first of a few online lessons we're going to have over the next few weeks. Here in our YouTube channel and our Facebook page, Southside Church of Christ. Our Wednesday night devotionals are also going up on our Facebook page there. They are not videos, they are just posts, so do be looking for those if you're interested to check those out. And our goal is still to use January 3rd as a kind of goal date to see what the climate's like, how we feel, if we're comfortable coming back to an in-person worship. And so that is our plan. Be sure to stay tuned again to our social media platforms for updates. I'll be notifying us via Facebook, YouTube, our church family email chain, whatever we need in order to make sure that we're all updated and that everybody knows what's going on. And just like we talked about last week, this online worship does not fully substitute for proper in-person worship as far as what we as Christians need and want and desire out of worship. But we do believe, given the climate right now, that this will help protect our more at-risk members who are at an increased risk and at a more potentially dangerous risk of catching the COVID-19 virus, as well as hopefully easing the burden that our healthcare workers are facing in these very strenuous times on our hospitals and medical facilities. So again, it's not ideal, but hopefully we're doing our part to show kindness and consideration for others. And as always, in all these things, be praying for the state of our world, be praying for our healthcare workers, those affected by this virus, and be praying for church leadership and churches around the world as we continue to make decisions, hopefully for the well-being of not just our congregations, but those in our community and hopefully around the world. The Santa Claus. Now, not Santa Claus the person, but Santa Claus the clause, a C-L-A-U-S-E, as in the line in the contract. The Santa Claus is a classic Christmas film, in my opinion, starring Tim Allen. It came out in the year 1994, which is a fantastic year, not just because I was born in that year, but I guess that's another topic for another time. In The Santa Claus, Tim Allen plays a very shrewd businessman. He's kind of a deadbeat dad, kind of down and out on his luck at the start of the film, but he accidentally kind of stumbles his way into becoming Santa Claus. He takes on the role of Santa Claus the person, the red hat and the white beard, and delivering gifts to children all over the world. Tim Allen becomes Santa Claus. Now, on that first night when he becomes Santa, he puts on the coat and he gets the bag of gifts and he gets in the sleigh and he does all of Santa's work. And then the reindeer, after his first night as Santa, take him back to the North Pole. And he's seeing all of this for the first time. And it's overwhelming to him. And he really doesn't believe it. He has it all there in front of him, but he's not quite registering it as being real. So when all's said and done, he's back at the North Pole. He's being filled in on his new duties and responsibilities as Santa Claus. And again, he thinks he's just hallucinating or dreaming. He sees and is describing all the fantastical things that are happening in front of him. And to the elves that are there, explaining the situation to him. And he says, this is all wonderful. It's fantastic. It's too fantastic, He says, I see it, but I don't believe it. He has it all there in front of him, but he doesn't believe that it's actually there. It's actually happening. To which the elves tell him, you're missing the point. Seeing isn't believing. Believing is seeing. A very important distinction to make. And, sure, that sounds like a nice, warm, magical Christmas movie line that's just kind of fluffy and nice, that warms us up in the holiday season, that we forget about and don't really think about after we've heard it being said. But I believe that there's a little bit more to that particular statement, that it is applicable in the lives of people of faith all over the world, that is something that we can actually cling to. Because we know that seeing something is not having belief in something, but belief in something is seeing something everywhere we go in our lives, even and especially when it's not there in front of you and you can't actually see it. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary describes belief with a few different definitions. One is a state or habit of mind in which trust or confidence is placed in some person or thing. Another definition is something that is accepted, considered to be true, or held as an opinion. And another definition there is conviction of the truth of some statement or the reality of some being or phenomenon, especially when based on examination of evidence. You see, belief in something requires an absence of some concrete physical form that you can have right there in front of you, because seeing something that's right there in front of you isn't belief in that thing, it's just sight. It's just seeing the thing there. You know, for example, let's say somebody approaches you on the street and asks you this question. They come up and say, "Do you believe in dogs?" And you're kind of taken aback by that question. You ask, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And they follow up again and they ask, "Do you believe that dogs exist?" And you might think to yourself, what a ludicrous question. Who would ask that? Because you see, we don't have to have belief that dogs exist, right? No one says, "I believe that dogs exist." We can see dogs, we can touch dogs, interact with dogs in our everyday physical lives. There's no belief required, right? They're just there. We see them. We know they are there. They exist with concrete physical proof. And so to see something exist in front of you, like a dog, for example, that's not belief. That's not belief in the thing. But to believe in something that you can't see, that you can't touch, that you can't interact with, to believe in that is to see it in our everyday lives all around us. Belief is a foundational cornerstone for people of faith, for shaping our worldview and how we view the world around us. Sure, anybody can have confidence in what they can see and touch and interact with, I see and have confidence and assurance in this podium right here, this microphone, the Bible in front of me, because I can see them, I touch them, I know that they are here. But that doesn't require a whole lot of extra resolve, right? My faith is not magnified because I believe that these things exist and they are here. That doesn't require any extra effort or resolve or willpower on my end. But you see, as people of faith, we are different from the rest of the world who puts their faith and trust and confidence in these things, these physical things they can see and they can touch. As people of faith, we are called to be different from the rest of the world. We are called to be transformed by the renewing of our minds and the focus on the more important aspects of life, as Paul tells us in Romans chapter 12, verse 2. Because you see, as Christians, our confidence is in what we hope for, and our assurance is in what we cannot see. That, of course, comes from the author of Hebrews, specifically Hebrews chapter 11, otherwise known as the Faith Hall of Fame to those of us familiar with the passage. And that's a wonderful passage filled with examples of people who put their faith and trust and confidence in God. Against all odds, their faith was not in what they could necessarily see and touch and interact with, but in God the Father, who delivered them from their situations. And Hebrews 11, as great as it is not where our key text is going to be taken from this morning. We are going back to the Gospels this morning, specifically the Gospel of John, where in the first few verses there was known as John's prologue to his Gospel. He tells us how important belief is for us, for people of faith, in becoming the foundation for our worldview and how we live and how it sets us apart from the rest of the world. That's John chapter 1, the first 5 verses. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. Here, John sets up the basis for what we as Christians believe. And he does so by paralleling his own gospel with the first book of the Bible. Let's look at the similarities between what John writes here in John chapter 1 and what we have recorded in Genesis chapter 1, the very beginning of the Bible. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then here in John, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Here, John identifies Jesus as the holy, eternal Son of God, who was with and who is God, and who was and is the culmination of God's plan for salvation for mankind. John equates Jesus, who is the Word, to light. Jesus is the Word was with God, the Word was God, and John makes the equation between Jesus, the Word, and light, the light in the darkness. Again, making a parallel between the first words God spoke all the way back in Genesis chapter 1, verse 3. Let there be light. The first word that God spoke was let there be light. And Jesus, the Word, is the light in the darkness. Jesus is that light and that good shining in the darkness of an evil, sinful, chaotic world. This is what we believe. This is who we believe Jesus Christ was and is. It is foundational to our worldview. And there in verse 5, that's where John makes the distinction between the light of Jesus and the darkness of the world. John 1:5 again. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. This version I'm reading here this morning, the New King James Version, says the darkness did not comprehend it. Other versions say the darkness did not understand it, or the darkness did not overcome it. But the point is, the darkness, the world, doesn't believe in Jesus. It doesn't believe that Jesus is who he said he was. That Jesus is the Son of God, that he is the only path to salvation, that he bore our sins on the cross and died for our sins and rose again on the third day, giving us the hope that nothing else ever could. He is the light to all mankind. But the world doesn't comprehend it. The world doesn't understand it. The world doesn't get it. They don't believe that Jesus is who he said he is. And the rest of John's prologue there, the next 18, or the first 18 verses of John, John talks about Jesus fulfilling his role as the Son of God, as the Messiah, the chosen one, the anointed one, and his role in the salvation of mankind, God's ultimate plan to save us from our sins. And that he did all that, and all that Jesus does, John goes into kind of painting it with broad brushstrokes there, and how, of course, people didn't accept him. But he briefly there talks about John the Baptist as well, the forerunner, the forebearer for Jesus Christ, and what John set out to do. That's, again, John chapter 1, verses 6 through 9. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. This man came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all through him might believe. He was not that light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. That was the true light, which gives light to every man coming into the world. John came to bear witness to the light, to tell people about Jesus and who he was and what he was going to do. Now, why? Why does John say that John the Baptist came and told people about the coming Christ? So that all through him might believe. Believe in Jesus Christ. Were any of us, you, me, our friends, our family, were any of us there when John was proclaiming the coming of Jesus Christ? Were any of us there when Jesus was teaching and performing miracles all throughout the region that he lived in? Were any of us there when Jesus Christ, the Son of God, the Messiah, was tortured and killed, crucified on a cross, buried in a grave, and rose again 3 days later? No, we weren't there. We didn't get to see Jesus. We didn't get to touch and hear and interact with Jesus Christ, the person, the Son of God, incarnate himself. But despite that, we still believe Jesus Christ is who he said he is. We believe in what he did and that he is coming back to take us home if we believe in him. Belief is a fundamental part of the Christian life. It is something that God expects and requires of us, that we believe in him against all odds, against all the persecutions that the world throws at us, against all the temptations of the flesh that we face every single day, against everything that the world, the darkness, can throw at us. We still believe in God. But the world doesn't believe in God. It can't believe in God. The world says, what a silly notion to put your trust and confidence and hope in something you can't see, something that could be imaginary for all you know. What a ridiculous notion. What a horrible idea. Because the world requires immediate physical concrete proof before it places its trust in anything. And because of that, the world is a lot like Thomas. Thomas, the follower of Jesus. Later in John's gospel, John records Jesus' resurrection. Jesus has returned. He has conquered the grave. He's conquered sin and death. And he's come back and he's risen and he goes and proclaims this news to his disciples, his followers. And they are ecstatic. Jesus, he's come back. He is the culmination of God's plan of salvation for man. He's done what he said he came to do. And he puts the final nail in the coffin of their doubt. He concretes once and for all that he is the Messiah, the Son of God, and he did what he said he came to do. But when Jesus comes back to tell his disciples, Thomas isn't there. Thomas is absent from this gathering. And so when Thomas eventually comes back, everybody is so overjoyed. They say, Jesus is back. He's risen from the dead. He is the Messiah. They're so overjoyed, and they tell Thomas, we talked with him. We know that he is the Son of God. But this is where we get the phrase, calling somebody a doubting Thomas. Because Thomas, hearing all this, all the news that Jesus has come back, Thomas replies, unless I see in his hands the print of the nails, and put my finger into the print of the nails, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe. The world sounds like Thomas, right? If God would just prove himself, just show some proof that he is real, that he exists, I would believe. If God could just show me a sign, do some miracle, prove to me that he exists, I would believe in him. But we know that's not necessarily true. People wouldn't believe in God after they'd seen him, because again, like we've established, seeing is not believing. If you've seen something, you don't believe in it. I don't believe in dogs or in cars or in plants. I see those things. I can interact with those things. There's no belief required for those things. And Jesus made that distinction when he returned and spoke to Thomas directly. That's John chapter 20, verses 26 through 29. And after 8 days, his disciples were again inside, and Thomas with them. Jesus came, the doors being shut, and stood in their midst, and said, "Peace to you." Then he said to Thomas, "Reach your finger here and look at my hands, and reach your hand here and put it into my side. Do not be unbelieving, but believing." And Thomas answered and said to him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Thomas, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." This is a verse that we, as believers, should find comfort in. You see, Thomas only believed that Jesus rose from the dead because he got to see him there. And he got to touch him and interact with him. And Jesus identifies that. He says, "Thomas, you only believe in me because you have seen me. You've seen the risen Lord. You've been able to touch and interact with me here. But blessed are those who have not seen me and still yet believe in me." And that's us. Jesus says that we are blessed because even though we haven't seen him, we believe that he rose from the grave. We believe that he did what he said he came to do. And that's what sets us apart from the rest of the world. That's what strengthens our foundation as believers of Jesus Christ. You know, the scribes and the Pharisees, they wanted a sign from Jesus too. They wanted proof that Jesus was who he said he was. They wanted Jesus to prove himself to them. But Jesus told them the only sign that they would get, specifically, if they didn't believe that, then they weren't going to believe him at all. That's found in Matthew chapter 12, verses 38 through 42. Then some of the scribes and Pharisees answered, saying, "Teacher, we want to see a sign from you." But Jesus answered and said to them, "An evil and adulterous generation seeks after a sign, and no sign will be given to it, except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. The men of Nineveh will rise up in the judgment with this generation and condemn it, because they repented at the preaching of Jonah, and indeed a greater than Jonah is here. The queen of the south will rise up in the judgment with this generation and condemn it, for she came from the end of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon, and indeed a greater than Solomon is here." You know, it's not like Jesus hadn't proven himself before this point in the story. He'd been preaching and teaching and performing miracles for quite some time now. This is well into Matthew's account of Jesus' ministry. These Jewish leaders had already seen Jesus performing miracles and doing great works and proving himself as the Son of God. And yet they still didn't believe him. And so Jesus said, the only sign you're going to get is the sign of Jonah. Just as Jonah was in the belly of the great fish for 3 days and 3 nights, so will Jesus be in the belly of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights, before he rises again, conquering sin and death. And if they didn't believe after that, then it's not a matter of proof, it's a matter of their hearts. The world likes to pretend that it's a lack of evidence that keeps them from believing in God. That if God would just show them some proof, of course they would believe. Who wouldn't, right? All we need is a sign, God, and we will believe in you. But like we talked about in our devotional on Wednesday night, God has given us ample evidence through the natural world that he exists. And as we've talked about today, seeing isn't believing. Seeing nullifies the need for belief. And as for the world, it's not a case of proof, it's a case of a hardened heart. Dr. Frank Turek, who's a Christian apologist that I've talked about before here, somebody that I greatly look up to and look to for study, he often asks atheists that he debates and talks to, he asks them, if Christianity were true, would you believe it? And many atheists are honest enough to answer, no. Even if Christianity was true, I would not believe it. See, even with all the proof there on the table, people still will not believe in Jesus Christ. Why? Why is that the case? Because there's not enough evidence? Because there's no proof of God? Or because they just don't want to believe in God? You see, following and by extension believing in God is a choice. It's a choice that we make. A choice given to everyone. And according to Jesus, who we believe, by the way, who we choose to follow, those who do so are blessed. Those who choose to follow Jesus Christ are indeed blessed. But that is a choice that each individual must make for themselves. And so if you've not made that choice yet, not made that decision to follow Jesus Christ, to put him on in baptism and transform your life forever, then I hope that you will make that decision. You will decide to put your confidence and faith and assurance and trust in Jesus Christ, who we believe.